Hiya. So let's talk about forgiveness. I've noticed in my relationship that the more that I'm able to forgive, the more harmonious my relationship is. And what's really interesting is that I'm not always forgiving only for the things that my partner is apologetic for. Like there are some times, and we've all probably been in these situations where there's an argument or there's a difference of opinion, things are said, and one person apologizes and the other forgives, and maybe vice versa as well. That's a really, I would say that was always quite an obvious type of forgiveness, right? So someone apologizes to me and I get to decide whether to forgive them or not. And then if I forgive them, then we're done. And there's this kind of more subtle kind of forgiveness that I want to talk about right now. And that, in my experience, has been so incredibly helpful in creating and sustaining a harmonious relationship. And that's the kind of forgiveness that you give when somebody hasn't even apologized. And that can happen multiple times a day. I think my partner and I both forgive each other many times every single day. And Linda Pettit, a beautiful, wonderful human being, amazing coach, once said to my partner and I mean, I don't know actually I must find the quote because I know we wrote it down, but it was along the lines of forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness and forgiving that was it. It was something like, me and my husband forgive each other 100 times a day. And that was interesting to me because we're not apologizing to each other 100 times a day. But there's this softening that I have fallen into, and sometimes I fall out of it, don't get me wrong, where I can forgive my partner when she doesn't even know that she's done something wrong. She doesn't even think that she's done something wrong. But I get to choose to forgive because actually forgiveness, or the lack of it, has much more to do with me than it does to do with anyone else. Whether I am in forgiveness or not creates whether I'm in a loving feeling or not. Whether I'm in forgiveness or not creates whether I'm feeling good in myself or not, creates whether I'm resentful or not, right? So forgiveness has a lot more to do with me than to do with the other person. In fact, the other person is almost irrelevant in this situation, in the way that I'm talking about it. It's like, if I have a heart of wanting to forgive someone, and if I forgive them, then it doesn't really matter whether they know about it because I've let something go. And hey, I get to benefit from that. I get to benefit from not having that heaviness in my heart, from lifting it all and letting go of it. So I'm going to give you a really, really trivial example of this. And this is the kind of thing that will happen multiple times a day. And those of you in relationships will probably recognize this and will probably relate to this a bit. The way that we forgive our partners all the time. So when we moved into this home that we're living in now, I noticed that the cutlery was in an order that was not what I deemed to be the right order. So maybe it was like forks, spoons, knives, and I thought it would make more sense to do spoons, forks, knives, or something like that. I don't even remember at this point. This is going back a few months. And I saw that the cutlery was in the wrong order, and so I switched it. I was like, oh yeah, this is better. And then the next time I opened the cutlery drawer, it was back to the previous way. So I was like, okay, there's something going on, as in my partner prefers it this way, right? If she didn't really mind, the cutlery probably would have stayed in the way that I'd done it. But clearly she minds because she moved it back, right? So in passing, I kind of asked, we were cooking or something, and I kind of asked her like, hey, is there a logic to this? Like, is there a reason why the cutlery, you've put the cutlery back in this way? Now, there was a time, just a little sidebar here, there was a time where I probably would have gotten kind of annoyed, like, no, the cutlery should be this way. Anyway, I just kind of got curious. I was like, hey, is there a logic? Because I'm open, right? If I'm not seeing something, if there's some logic that I'm missing here around cutlery, please tell me. So that's what I asked. I was like, is there some logic? And basically, she said something along the lines of, because that's where the forks go, and that's where the spoons go, and that's where the knives go. That's how it should be. So what I took from that was, okay, there's no logic. There's no real ergonomic reason why the cutlery needs to be in this order, but she seems to really care about the cutlery being in this order, right? Just from the way that she said it, like that's how it is, that's how it's always been, whatever. Now, I don't care enough about the order of the cutlery to fight this battle. So I was like, fine. Now, you could name that as a type of forgiveness in the sense that like that's me. And by the way, I had another way of doing it, as you know, right? So I was like, actually, I really would prefer it this way. I didn't say that because what was going on in my head was, it's okay. This is really a very, very trivial example, and we could talk about other examples too that maybe are a bit more edgy. But in that moment, it was like, I can forgive that. I can forgive, and forgive might not even feel like the right word here because I'm very aware she did nothing wrong. But it was this kind of acceptance, this love, this energy of forgiveness that I was in, of like, okay, let's do it your way. And I didn't say that. In fact, it wasn't a thing. We just moved on immediately. But in my heart, in my mind, it was like, okay, I could remember that. I've made a sacrifice about the cutlery, and you got to do the cutlery your way. So let me have the cutlery. Let me have something else my way. There was like this softening of like, okay, so we'll do the cutlery her way. I don't care enough for it to matter. I don't care enough to fight this battle. So I'll let that go. And then there was a really cool realization around that, which is she doesn't even have to know that I've forgiven her. Right? She was a bit uptight about the cutlery. Right? She was a bit like, this is how the cutlery is, so this is how it's going to be. No question around whether I mind about that. No question around how I like the cutlery to be. Right? So this is a narrative I could have gone through. Like, hang on a minute, why am I here bending to your ways and you're not even bothered to ask me what my way might be? You don't even know that I've made a compromise here. And that's a really cool bit of forgiveness that I've been noticing. Is like, you don't even have to know that I've forgiven you. You don't even have to know that there's anything to forgive. In fact, most of the time you probably wouldn't believe that there is anything to forgive, and you don't have to. Forgiveness is an inside job. Like, it's something that happens in me and ultimately for me, because I don't like the feeling of resentment. I don't like the feeling of keeping tabs. I don't like the feeling of being like, I've done this for you, so you do that for me. So we get to forgive the big things and the little things. We get to forgive when they know that they're in the wrong. We get to forgive when they don't know they're in the wrong, and we get to forgive when they don't even think they're in the wrong. We get to forgive without them even knowing that that's what's happening right now. And we forget. And there is such a beauty in wholly forgetting, not coming back to it. Do you remember when I forgave you for that and you didn't even apologize to me? Right? And again, I want to clarify, I get this sometimes and I don't get this sometimes. It's a practice, it's a learning curve. Every situation is different, every couple is different. But it has been so freeing for me to play with forgiving wholly, forgetting completely, irrespective of whether the other person wants the forgiveness, thinks they need the forgiveness, even knows that it's happened. And I'm doing that 10, 20, 30 times a day. And I know my partner is doing that for me. I see it. And sometimes I don't see it, but I know it's happening. And that's a really fun space to be in, where you don't need to worry as much about these little things because we are in the habit, in the heart, in the intention of forgiving, constantly forgiving. I hope that's helpful and there's something in there for you. Take care.